So I recently posted a brand breakdown of the work I did with ZenBusiness, the decisions we made, the system we built. But I thought the most valuable perspective wasn't mine. It was a person inside the building who had to make the work work. So joining me is Ethan, the VP of brand at ZenBusiness. And I'm really glad he said yes to this conversation. So let's get into it. Ethan, what's going on, man? Thank you so much for making the time for chatting.
Yeah, my pleasure. Excited to talk.
Cool. So yeah, I'd be curious, what was the state of the ZenBusiness brand before we got started on the work we did?
Yeah, the brand was read as very transactional. It almost read like ZenBusiness. It was super conversion focused on getting you to buy an LLC.
So with that, would you say it was a little bit more like product focused versus any brand being built or even emphasized?
Yeah, it was very much, we have a product. This is what we sell. Do you want to buy our product? And not really getting into any of the emotional journey that an entrepreneur's on and what big of a deal this is for them and how we function as a brand to help them and to support them.
Which leads me to the next question. I'd be curious, before we started our work together, how were the brand decisions being made?
Yeah, it almost entirely conversion based. So we would A/B test a message. Does it convert? And to be honest, we were running conversion messaging across all stages of the funnel. That's a lot of the work we did, was to really set the stage for how we can exist higher up the funnel, which will ultimately lead to better conversion.
Yeah, I see that a lot where companies are taking very conversion bottom of the funnel work and putting it in an awareness channel. But it's interesting. We build out the brand. So we create a relationship so that the conversion still happens, but still happens more effectively and efficiently.
Absolutely. I mean, and part of my joining the company to kind of build the brand function and my looking to you to really help me bring that brand strategy and that messaging together was to teach the company about that. You could look at LLC formation as somewhat of a commodity. You could do it yourself. You could go to a competitor, any one of our competitors, and do that. Nothing was being given to the brand and how we tell that story of who we are, what we stand for. Allyship that we truthfully feel was not being conveyed and it wasn't articulated. Business had grown very successfully on conversion for years, but with all the competition, they realized that they needed to have a brand to build that relationship, to improve conversion. Ultimately, you need a brand upstream. Beyond just the external facing brand that consumers see in our marketing, we really needed to shift the internal brand of the company and to have them believe in this new strategy, this new mission. And so the work that we did, I presented that out at the all hands to close out 2025, last all hands of the year, to set our new intent, to really get everybody motivated and bought in. And it did a very effective job of telling the story to ourselves.
Yeah. And the brand book that I received was 60 plus pages. And the first couple pages were wall-to-wall copy about what a brand is. And I saw the opportunity of, okay, well, we need to educate the audience, which is the internal C-suite first.
Yeah. Right.
And so it's interesting to think, even though the work that I do is consumer focused, the first audience that we have to get approval for is the internal decision makers. Because if they don't buy in, then nothing's going to happen, right?
The brand book that we inherited when I joined the company was 60 pages, walls of text. There was no emotion. You would struggle to get through it. And really the work that I was so impressed by that you did was to fill that brand book down into the key points, but give it that emotional weight that it carries. One of the lines that you identified was this idea of bringing calm to the chaos. Entrepreneurship is very chaotic. It's overwhelming. People are emotionally vulnerable. And what ZenBusiness can do is bring calm to that. And not only is that a great line to use in marketing, but that became a singular line that we could use in building the product itself, and making decisions day to day. Is this product feature, is this function, is how customer support is talking to somebody, are they inherently bringing calm to what can be chaotic? And so by distilling down what had been 60 pages of text into these very memorable, actionable, decision-making vectors, it immediately became effective in using it with product design, across the board.
Yeah. And I think that line was helpful because the way I talk about a lot of brand decisions is like the ultimate filter.
Yep.
What line or statement can we rally around that we put all of our effort through? And if it comes out the other side, then we should pursue it. And if it meets with some tension, then maybe we should. And I think even for your team, if this isn't adding calm to the chaos, we shouldn't do it. And so it's really good to hear that.
It stuck with not just the marketing organization, but with a lot of different teams as a filter. So very successful.
That's great. Yeah. When did you know it was time to just bring in some outside help. I'd love for you to walk us through a little bit more about like that decision that you made.
Yeah. When I joined, I knew that I needed to redefine the brand strategy for the company. And I made some early decisions. The notion of that we need to transition from being a utility to an ally. I came to that conclusion and I knew that that needed to manifest in the product. But how do you bring that to life? Like, you turn that insight into a strategy, and how do you build a strategy around that? I knew that I couldn't just create another PDF, another set of words that people would read. You could look at the brand strategy that we had. LegalZoom, our competitor, could have copied it and put it on their website. It wasn't unique to them. It wasn't brought to life. It wasn't inspiring. And so I knew that we needed to bring in experts, who had done this before. You had done this for other brands. I was impressed by, the work that you had done with Instacart and other companies, and really to show the way, and to rally everybody around this and make it feel like it's not just another set of words on a deck that the marketing team use. Not only did you deliver a brand strategy, but you delivered what we called the brand operating system, which was a framework for how to apply this strategy across different departments, of the company.
And I'd be curious too, how did you make the case internally to bring in external support? There's budget constraints, there's time constraints. Like, it's not an easy sell, especially with high ticket items like this. So I'd be curious, how did you make this case internally?
Companies fall into the trap of moving at speed. Everything's reactionary. Something's happening. You make a quick decision. And you're making all of these decisions without a proper foundation or starting point to guide those decisions. And really what I was convincing the company to do in investing in this work was, rather than moving at speed with force, was to slow down, do the foundational work so we can move forward with momentum. And momentum is effortless if you have the right foundation. It's a good brand strategy, as I truthfully feel that the one that we created together makes it look like it was effortless. Because it's so clear, crystal clear. And that's, you've done it right if that's the case. But to actually get to that point, it takes a commitment. And so I honestly had to put a lot of trust in you. And we worked together to say, I'm going to throw down and say, in my first month of being on the job, we need to slow down to invest in this so that we can move with momentum versus speed and reactionary. And the company, I feel grateful that they made the investment and they immediately saw the benefit of what we were doing. And it went from just words on a page into a proper strategy that carries the emotional weight to make people believe in what we're saying.
And I think, to your point, this work wasn't transformative. We didn't reinvent anything with ZenBusiness. We just stripped the fat and focused on what we could do and say. And so it should be familiar and almost comforting and say, oh, this is us. Now I know.
And that's what we did. And that's honestly what made the exercise a bit difficult, because I remember when I handed it off to you, handed you a brand book that had been created within the last year. And so we had to say, okay, and what is good and what are we keeping? Where are we pushing and pulling to really get the most out of what we're saying? And so the job that you did was amazing in kind of riding that line. And it did feel familiar. And I think we landed it. And the response that I got after presenting this out to the broader company really was, people that I'd never met, old timers who had been there for years, independently reaching out to me on Slack saying, thank God we're finally doing this, which was very validating. And it did that job of giving people renewed, energy that, that we are going to take the time to do it right.
Yeah. Man, I love to hear that. That knowing that we did a good job and we left it better than we found it, but then hearing that my client, gets the clap on the back and gets the shout outs, I'm like, that stuff is like fuel to me.
The key that I discussed with leadership and that you delivered on so effectively was this idea, if it's just another brand strategy that is going to get presented to the company and it goes nowhere. And, you helped me sell this internally, how we can protect against that. And it was this idea of, yes, there's the brand book, the high level, tight. We need to keep it tight. We need to keep it engaging. People need to want to read this. And then there's the brand operating system, which is the translation layer from this brand strategy that gets much more detailed into how you use this in performance marketing, how you use this in social media, how you use this on landing pages, which takes it from being just something to collect dust to something that teams can take and immediately act upon. The brand OS, I repeatedly to this day on the different people within the marketing org who are making decisions about the different advertisers are putting out, how much they use the brand OS and how it made their job so much easier to do, and gave them a framework to be able to think within when they're writing calls to action and putting creative into the world.
Yeah. I'd be curious, what was the experience of building this together like? What was it like having a partner on the other side to bounce the ball back and forth and know that you're in 9 hours of meetings all day
Yeah.
and you can pass it off to somebody and know that it's in good hands? I'd be curious from your perspective, what was that like?
Yeah. I mean, it saved me. It was the biggest sense of relief to have a partner that I knew on a strategic level, we were on the same page of what we were trying to accomplish. I'm in meetings all day, running brand. I'm running teams, different teams all over the company. I'm spread thin. And I could trust in you that you would take it and come back, and that we would stay on track, that we could work together to wordsmith it, but you were pushing things forward. You were driving things through, and I could rely upon that. And even when we started presenting this through to executives, I have honestly don't know if I've ever met anybody as good at commanding that room, and the creative vision in that room, and bringing people back to what we're trying to accomplish and delivering it. When you're with executives, if I'm pressed for time, the CEO and the CMO are even more pressed for time. And there's this balance of showing leadership, everything you went through to get to the decision, and saying, this is what we recommend, versus optionality and talking it through. And I thought you did an amazing job. You brought us along on the journey to understand the rationale that went into the decision. So it made it really easy to make decisions.
And it's all to say that your team they came prepared, they asked really good questions, and they were all locked in. I think that's part of the success of this work.
People were engaged and they really cared. And I was impressed that when we would really start debating something in depth, you did a very good job of leading the conversation to a point that showing your gratitude that we're paying this much attention and that we care this much. And I think that was a good reminder for everybody on the project, in that, yes, we're debating this because it matters and we all care. But I thought that, the way we navigated that was done well. And I attribute a lot of that to you.
So part of the opportunity I see is to make my client's life easier, right?
Yeah.
And so with the brand book, with the operating system, I'd be curious, you as the VP of brand, is your life easier now because of the work that we did?
It is much easier. And I'll explain why. With AI, there's a lot of pressure being put on organizations, including ZenBusiness, to do more with less. And if people are using different tools and platforms to build ads, the volume of ads that are getting built, the volume of creative that getting built can get out of control. And so to have something like the brand OS and the brand book that give you a very good starting point strategically with the brand book, functionally with the brand OS, where enough guidance that they can go create. And the starting point at which what I'm reviewing and what's coming back is being reviewed, it's so much closer, if not perfect. And so it's just completely up-leveled our team's ability to create content on their own, that is more often than not on brand and correct.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me to the next follow-up question. I'd be curious, how has the team's confidence changed since having a clear brand foundation in front of them?
I think it was a boost in confidence. And when the feedback loop coming from myself when I'm reviewing this is genuinely very positive because it is on brand, that also just helps the relationship, the working relationship. And if the team doesn't view brand as this bottleneck that is going to mark up every single word because it's way off brand, there's more of a willingness to engage and to get feedback early. And through that, a relationship of trust gets created where at a certain point, we don't need to review all the creative that's going out. And you can remove those cycles entirely because you start to trust that it's going to be on brand. And even if something wasn't entirely on brand, it's not so far off that it's going to do some brand damage.
Yeah, little revisions versus wild swings. It's like,
Right.
I remember back in my days as a creative in-house, brand was almost a deterrent. And with this process, it's almost like an accelerant. And that's really one of the goals with this work is just the efficacy and the efficiency.
Absolutely. The adoption was immediate to these teams. And I credit that to how it was laid out and delivered. It wasn't overwhelming.
But the last question I have is I'd be curious, this clarity that we created for your team and for the brand, what does that look like going forward?
This clarity has really unlocked us to start applying this entire new positioning of the company across the board. And again, that new positioning going from a transactional utility, an LLC selling company to this ally, the idea of calm in the chaos. And it's allowed us to creating this strong foundation to start working with teams across the company to begin applying that to their corner of the business. We are more and more starting to leverage AI within the company, and we've been able to take the foundation of the language that we use in the brand book and the OS, and how do we start to train up our own brand voice agents and models within the AI that we're using to write copy. And without that starting point, you couldn't do it. There would be nothing to point back to. Velo is our AI. We did an entire other brand exercise with you on Velo, and we used everything that we defined about Velo, our AI, and how we talk about it to train the actual voice of the AI itself. So that when you're talking to Velo, these ideas of confidence and the different tenets of the brand are being applied into the actual product itself. There is no bigger reflection of the impact to the brand is that product experience. And so the starting point was everything.
Yeah, I love to hear that it's being used in every corner of the business. Beyond marketing, that's what a lot of people either don't give credit to or don't think about, is that brand should be in everything. It's not just a little thing for marketing. How can it inform and differentiate your AI? How can it empower your leaders to go on the TED stage and talk with consistency and conviction? It's like giving everyone a purpose and reason, but it's to differentiate, and everyone can kind of speak on that.
And we talked about this from the beginning. If we create a beautiful presentation that collects dust, that is failure. And that's how we got to this notion of the brand book and the brand OS. That's how we got to having the president chief product officer. Samir was very involved in this because of this, knowing that this needs to translate through to the product itself. Dave, the VP of design, was very involved in this from day one, because those are stakeholders that they need to believe. And we talked a lot about this, is that not only for valuing different opinions, somebody who's product minded, operational minded, but everybody has to be bought in. And I think the work that we did to include those people from the start leads to them feeling ownership over it. And the more people that can feel ownership over what we put out, they're then going to be, evangelizing using this new brand strategy to their teams. And it goes from, it ripples out from there. And I think we achieved what we set out to do, and not just create a document that's going to look pretty, but collect dust.
It's clear, concise, and actionable. And to your point, everyone can see the benefit of it regardless of their role. This work allowed everyone to be aligned and literally use it as a playbook, and they all knew how to take pages out of it to affect their work.
And absolutely. Product of all of our work will hit the mainstream. It completely redefined what our homepage of our company will look like. It redefined how our AI is going to talk to people. It helped redefine the experience in the mobile app, which is brand new. And it all stems back to this foundation, the starting point of transitioning from this utility to an ally.
I could go on and on and on, but I know you're busy. So, man, thank you so much for the time. It was awesome to kind of go back into that world that we were in and rehash this stuff. But yeah, appreciate the time. And I'm so stoked to just keep an eye on ZenBusiness and see what y'all are about to accomplish.
Yeah, appreciate it. And like I said, you come in as the new VP of brand and you say you want to invest in a new brand strategy and spend a lot of money and a lot of time that the company wasn't used to. I had a lot on the line with this. So thank you for delivering upon that. And everybody involved looks back and is thankful and pleased for the work that we did together. So appreciate you.
Man, high praise. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. All right. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah. Good to see you, bud.